Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the update. I know it's been a while from the last time we saw each other, as it was before the election, and now the game has changed. A new administration, new House, new Senate, new legislative sessions all underway, and of course the world is continuing to turn. But we'd like to welcome you back to the update, your home for news and politics, local to nationwide. We're keeping you up to date. And as I've said, it has been a busy week. In fact, I got to run out of here soon to go cover a story. So we'll get right into it. We're going to be tossing it over to Jordan Tovar, who is missing. We had to shoot this in fragments, but he will give you an update on what's going on here in Iowa City.
Away in Iowa City for a vacant seat on the City Council. Iowa City residents in District C are the only ones who can vote for the February 4th primary. Residents who live in downtown Iowa City and some northern areas past the University of Iowa campus can vote in the primary. Ross Nusser, Oliver Whelan, Sharon DeGraw are competing for the spot Andrew Dunn once held, though as of Sunday, DeGraw had dropped out of the race for the vacant seat. And on Monday night, the candidates that remain held an open forum to introduce themselves to the public. In attendance was myself, who gathered the thoughts of the public and the candidates. And inside here at the Iowa City Senior Center, residents of District C would pose their questions to the two candidates that remain on hot-button issues like the housing crisis.
Affordable housing absolutely is one of the main things, and I think the city is doing a lot of good to approach that, but I think we can widen our array of tools and learn from other places around the country and around the world.
And what we should focus on, affordable housing has been a big issue that the community has really has a desire to impact.
With recent state legislation, Nusser had a message of working with the state, but Wyline, not so much.
We do not need to put a target on our backs. We need to avoid further state and federal intervention. And that means that we have to go along and figure out how we can deal with the legislation coming down by the state.
I said earlier, a mindset of pre-compliance, like, okay, we are going to have to pit communities against each other. We are going to have to throw our hands up and say, there's nothing we can do. We kind of just have to go along with what the state or the federal government is doing. I think that we can get more creative with it. I think that there are models around the world.
As the questions started to lessen, they brought the issues to a national level, including immigration concerns.
I don't know how the Iowa City Police is going to be able to deal with it. I know that I would like to be part of those discussions. I know that I would like to value the individuals and show support for all of our community.
ICE should not exist. And I think that ICE is a terrorist organization in the United States that separates families, and I've seen the real impact that it has had on our local level.
Now that the candidates have made their points, it's up to the residents of District C now to decide who will win the primary, which will take place on February 4th. From the Iowa City Senior Center, Jordan Tovar, DITV.
Thanks, Jordan. And expanding our look, we're going to be going just here from Iowa City to the entire state of Iowa and in Des Moines. The Iowa legislative session is now in full swing, and they are getting to work out there. One of the newest bills is House Study Bill 80, which includes a 5-year pause on new casino licenses in the state. House Study Bill 80 is similar to Senate File 76, which looks to enact the same pause on gambling licenses. The last pause on gaming licenses ended on July 1st. And taking a look at some of the other bills, a House Study Bill 15, which looks to criminalize the smuggling of non-citizens into the U.S. for either personal gain or to hide them from law enforcement. Being caught in the act would result in a felony charge. This bill was introduced earlier this month and advanced from subcommittee to House Judiciary Committee on last Wednesday. The Iowa Senate advanced 2 bills on January 21st. The first bill would get rid of police review boards in Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, Dubuque, Coralville, and University Heights. These groups evaluate complaints made about police misconduct and discipline. The goal is to make the appeal process fair for police officers who are fired, suspended, or demoted. The second bill would prohibit drivers from using their phones while operating their vehicles, with a few exceptions, such as when the car comes to a complete stop or if drivers are turning the device off. To stop people from distracted driving, anyone found guilty of violating this hands-free driving bill will be convicted of a simple misdemeanor. And I'm not sure if you caught it or not, but I was actually in Des Moines covering the first 2 days of the Iowa legislative session, and the condition of the state address by Kim Reynolds, that was a major point she made. But now we're going to be jumping out of Iowa into the rest of the country. We'll be sending it over to DITV Assistant News Director Jace Bertrand, who has what's going on around the country and the world.
Thanks, Johnny. And as the country heads towards an uncertain and shaky second term for President Trump, other shakeups are occurring on the world stage. Over the weekend, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol was indicted on charges of insurrection after declaring a failed status of martial law in the country last month. He is the first president in the country's history to face such charges, and if found guilty, he faces death or life in prison. The defense minister, police chief, and other military commanders are facing similar charges for their involvement in the plot. Supporters of Yoon began violently protesting after the charges were announced, signaling a continuation of the political turmoil in the country. And in Africa, 2 different civil wars are causing thousands of immigrants to flee their homes. The largest city in the Congo and the largest hub in East Africa is under siege by rebel forces backed by neighboring Rwanda. Goma is home to 2 million people and houses much of the production of the minerals that power the rest of the world's technology. The civil war has dipped into ethnic conflict at times, forcing many to pick sides or flee to neighboring countries. The alleged capture of Goma is a drastic escalation in a war that has been raging since 2012, but it increased intensity in 2022. Meanwhile, in Sudan, 70 people were killed in an attack on El Fashir. The attack targeted the only functional hospital in the city, which has seen combat between the Sudanese military and the rebel Rapid Support Force. Local officials are blaming rebels for the attack, and the Saudi Arabian government has condemned it as a violation of international law. Previous U.S. assessment has declared that the RSF are committing a genocide in Sudan, yet this has done little to prevent the fighting. A lot of news is coming out over the east side of the weekend, and this is a grim reminder to us that America is not the center of the world. So right now we're going to send it back to Johnny for more.
But we're now going to be going into D.C. with the White House, and this is a new segment, a White House update, just keeping track of what President Donald Trump is doing. And the new administration entered a back-and-forth match with Colombia over the weekend due to deportations. The U.S. military flights carrying deportees to Colombia were rejected, despite Colombian President Gustavo Petro approving the flights prior to takeoff. You can see 25% tariff on Colombia, and if the country did not follow through with their half of the agreement. The U.S. also suspended visa processing in Colombia late Sunday night. Petro reached an agreement with the United States to allow the planes to land in Colombia and deliver the deportees. As President Trump begins his new term, he now awaits the Senate approval of his cabinet picks. As of now, Marco Rubio, John Ratcliffe, and Kristi Noem have passed the Senate vote and will take on their cabinet positions. Yet Trump's latest pick, Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, faced stiff opposition. In fact, the vote came down to a tie-breaking vote by Vice President J.D. Vance, who cast the tie-breaking vote in the Senate to approve of Hegseth.
Help you God, so help me God. Congratulations, Mr. Secretary.
3 Republicans voted no to Hegseth's nomination, including former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Hegseth, the former Fox News host and veteran, has been accused of sexual misconduct and alcoholism prior to his selection.
Or the Majority Leader or the Minority Leader, I think they've all come to recognize that Lisa Murkowski does her homework and does what she thinks is right for her constituents and for the right reasons.
On his first day Monday, Hegseth awaits further executive orders of removing DEI in the Pentagon, bringing back troops who were dismissed because of COVID mandates, continuing to secure the border, and more.
We're going to hold people accountable. I know the chairman agrees with that. The lawful orders of the President of the United States will be executed inside this Defense Department swiftly and without excuse.
A lot going on in the White House, but just across the way over in D.C., we're also going to be taking a look at Capitol Hill. And now this is another new segment putting the microscope on Congress and see what they're doing. First, in the U.S. House of Representatives, 4 North Carolina Republicans are pushing to block non-citizens from being counted for the nationwide apportionment of House seats and Electoral College votes. While the bill passed the House last May, it stalled in the Senate. With the new Senate and the current administration's priorities, traction for the bill could pick up. Now over to the Senate, 47 members of a Democratic caucus have signed on to condemn President Trump's pardons for those charged with a crime on the January 6th riot on the Capitol. Over 1,600 were pardoned by the president, some of which who were convicted and serving jail time. The resolution would just be a proclamation that the caucus, made up of Democrats and independents, do not approve of the pardons. Republicans in the Senate are wanting an open committee vote for the confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard is up for the Director of National Intelligence and is among the boat of controversial picks with bipartisan skepticism. An open Senate Intelligence Committee vote would have the members vote in public instead of the usual private setting. With a split of 9 Republicans and 8 Democrats, Republicans are fearing that one vote that could flip would stop Gabbard's nomination from ever hitting the Senate floor. And with all that's going on right now, we were thinking, what do we keep? What did we get rid of? But something we still want to keep up and we are still doing is poll watch. So we're going to send it over to Joan Tovar, and he's going to be seeing what people are thinking of all these changes in America.
As you all know, the presidential election is obviously over, but that doesn't mean that the polls are stopping anytime soon. We can still look at things like approval rating, favorability, and even a super early look ahead to 2028. Starting off first here, despite numerous controversial executive orders, President Donald Trump currently holds a positive favorability rating according to one poll. According to a survey done by Echelon Insights, President Trump holds a positive favorability rating of 50 to 48% in the early stages of his second stint, though the pollsters at YouGov gathered a different set of results that had the opposite result for 47. Trump holds a negative approval rating, trailing behind 50 to 47% in this poll. And it still might seem like a lifetime away, but 2028 is going to get here quicker than you think. In hypothetical situations for the presidential race, SoCal Strategies presented 4 different Democratic nominees against an assumed Republican nominee and current VP J.D. Vance. The Democratic nominees presented were Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, California Governor Gavin Newsom, and last but not least, former Vice President Kamala Harris, who ran in 2024 against Donald Trump but lost. Though I mentioned her last, Harris was the only one to come out on top of Vance, edging him out 43 to 41%. That's all I've got for the polls this week, but we're going to send it out for some more factual information to Jace with Fact Check.
Thanks, Jordan. And in light of President Trump's visit to California last week, I think it's important to look at the truth of what's occurring during these wildfires. After dozens of fire hydrants went dry during early attempts to fight the Palisades fire, dozens of conservative pundits, including the president and African national Elon Musk, claimed that California had been mismanaging their water supply due to drought restrictions. In reality, several reservoirs had been reported as being more than adequately full, and it was not a lack of water that caused the hydrants to run dry, but rather the sudden amount of stress that was put onto them all at once. The system simply couldn't handle all that pressure. And despite Trump's claims that California is dumping thousands of gallons of water into the Pacific Ocean, Los Angeles has enough water saved up to fit the city's needs for 3 years, and the water up north that Trump wants to be diverted to Los Angeles is currently being used by the state's agricultural base, which was one of President Trump's largest voting blocks in the 2024 election. And unfortunately, we can no longer hold our breaths waiting for a convicted criminal and foreign billionaire to tell us the truth, so I'm sure I'm going to have no issue finding more facts to check. But for now, let's send it back to Johnny to wrap us up.
Thanks, Jace. A lot happening. It's good that we still have Fact Check, keeping the facts straight. And now we are getting into another new segment we're bringing this semester. It's what to look out for in the coming week. With a whirlwind of events, as you've seen, filling up the news cycle, we're going to give you what to look out for and watch in the coming week. Continue signing executive orders in the coming week. After a wave of them from his first week in office, he's turning attention away from the border and to the military. Some orders may include reinstating troops kicked out for refusing COVID-19 vaccines, reevaluating transgender members in the military, and potentially more repeals for diversity programs. Speaking of which, bills regarding vaccines are coming up in state houses across the country. More than 15 states have bills around restructuring current legislation around vaccines. This could include religious exemptions from immunization updates, new state-level vaccine injury databases, or what medical providers have to tell patients about shots. This comes with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Senate confirmation hearing coming up soon, as he is slated to become the Trump administration's Secretary of Health and Human Services. He has previously stated that vaccines are not safe, but is now repositioning himself with these statements ahead of the hearing. And of course, we'll be keeping an eye on the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas as hostages continue to be returned and Palestinians are returning to Gaza. And with that, folks, we'd like to thank you for tuning into the update tonight. We'll find all your news and politics. Tune in next week for more updates from local level to the nationwide level. And of course, we'll have more of a fuller staff. Jordan will be rejoining me up here. Kind of a hectic week, still getting back in this week and things. But folks, it is so great to be back and keeping you up to date. For the update, I'm Johnny Valtman. Have a wonderful night.